Okay, as we've discussed several times, the Roman Empire doesn't really fall. Okay, the western parts fall. The parts over here in Spain and Italy and what is now France and Germany up here above the Danube and all this area over to around here all stay, all go away and they all break apart into small kingdoms. But the rest of the empire, so this area here in red, and I'm hoping it's showing up for you, stays the Roman Empire. They consider themselves to be Roman. They follow Roman law, though they speak more Greek language than Latin. And it later becomes called the Byzantine Empire because it's based at the city of Constantinople, which was formerly known as Byzantium. Okay, this is the empire prior to 527, so in the 50 years after the fall of Rome, and then it expands, and we'll talk about how it expands, especially because of the conquests of a man named Justinian. He is probably the most significant of all the Byzantine emperors, all the emperors that come after the fall of the Western Empire. Okay, so a little bit on geography. Most importantly, Constantinople, the capital city of the Byzantine Empire. Okay, 324 CE, Constantine the Great moves the capital of the Roman Empire there and renames it after himself. As I said, it's formerly the Greek city of Byzantium. He renames the city Constantinople, or city of Constantine. And it becomes the capital of the Roman Empire. 395, as we've talked about when we were in Rome, the empire is divided. The East sees themselves as the emperors of all Rome because the East is the wealthy part. Okay. Constantine makes a very wise choice. Putting the empire, the capital, at Constantinople is an immensely far-sighted decision. First of all, it's at a crossroads of Europe and Asia. It's centralized to what is now the empire. It's very well defended geographically, but also for trade and travel with the Bosphorus Strait, which leads to the Sea of Marmara and the waters of the Black Sea. It has, on the north, there's an estuary that reaches 5 miles into the Thracian hills. So it kind of cuts off from one side, provides the means for travel to the city from the north, but also provides a geographic barrier. And the city also has one of the finest natural harbors in the world, and it is built on what is known as a promontory, or on a cliff, which makes it very defensible. Okay, here's a map. It gives you a little better view of it. You can see here's the Golden Horn on one side, the Sea of Marmara, the Straits of the Bosphorus down here. So on three sides you have it's defended by water. All of these are cliffs, so it helps to protect it from seaward attack. So all you need to do is build a system of walls on the other side, on the landward side, to protect you from invasion on that side, and that's what they do. It's a very prosperous city with a lot of entertainments, including a giant stadium called the Hippodrome that holds up to 60,000 people. So we're talking bigger than the Carrier Dome here in Syracuse, probably something on the size of a Rich Stadium, or whatever they're calling it now, in Buffalo, or possibly Giant Stadium down in New York City. Okay, by 401, the city's grown. Okay, so over the 70 years that it's been the capital, it's grown to impressive heights. 14 churches, 14 palaces, aqueducts, a circus, the theaters, 4,300 houses for the wealthy, 4 meeting halls for the Senate and the law courts, and it has these huge defensive walls. They're triple thick, and they turn away every invader for over 1,000 years until finally the Ottoman Turks show up with cannon and knock them down because they couldn't be penetrated any other way. So quickly, stop the video. And I want you to write down some factors that you've just seen that make Constantinople a center for cultural diffusion, military defense, and trade. Okay, so moving on. So when the Western Empire is under attack, geography helps the Eastern Empire stay intact. Okay, it continues to thrive and expand. Just in 527, a man named Justinian comes to the throne. He sends one of his best generals to attack the Goths in Rome. After a 16-year battle, he gains control of Italy and Spain, and he calls himself the new Caesar. But he does a lot more. Okay, quickly write down how the Roman and Byzantine empires were connected and then move on. Okay, around 540, a disease shows up, borne by rats from Egypt, which has long been the breadbasket of the Mediterranean world. This is where most of the grain is grown, and it spreads across the empire to Constantinople. It claims as many as 5,000 people a day and kills nearly half of the population of Constantinople. From there, it moves east and west, and it becomes antiquity's most lethal known pandemic. This is not the Black Death that will appear 1,000 years later or 800 years later that kills such a huge population of Europe. But this one is huge. Between 25 million and 100 million people die from this plague. Okay, the damage is so great that the Persian and Byzantine emperors are made vulnerable to the Muslim conquest of the next century. This allows for a lot of change to take place in the area, and it also may have ushered in this area that we now call the Dark Ages in Europe. Okay, now the Byzantines, while they're still Roman, they are different. And a lot of it is because it develops its own culture, and it's more based on Greek and Greek learning than on the Latin language and the Latin learning of the Western Empire and what is now Europe. Okay, Justinian does a lot of reforms, and the biggest and probably most famous of these is his reform of the legal code. Okay, he sets up a tribunal or a group to analyze all the 400 years of Roman law since the time of Augustus. Okay, they find laws that are contradictory. They find laws that no longer apply. They're outdated. And they create a single unified code known as the Justinian Code. And this code consists of 4 works. And it's very, very influential even on modern society. Okay, has the code that has nearly 5,000 Roman laws, still considered useful. The digest, which is kind of the opinions and the summaries of the laws. It's 50 volumes long, so it's a huge set of encyclopedias. The institutes, a textbook that teaches law students how to use the laws. And then it has the novella, which are the laws that are passed after the original code is introduced. Okay, it decides legal questions throughout the empire: marriage, slavery, property, inheritance, women's rights, and criminal justice. Okay, Justinian dies in 565, so shortly after, only 20 years after this code is introduced, but the code goes on for another 900 years, and its remnants still are used throughout Europe and into the United States with our legal codes. Okay, meanwhile, while this whole law project is going on, Justinian launches a massive public building project. Okay, he rebuilds Constantinople, including a 14-mile stone wall along the city's coastline. But his crowning glory is a church, and this is a picture of it. It's known as the Hagia Sophia, or the Church of Holy Wisdom. It becomes known as the most beautiful church in the world. When the Ottomans come in, they don't knock it down. They turn it into a mosque. It is now a museum. Okay, and you can go see it. So I want you to do now, review back over what you've already done and tell me how Justinian adapted Roman law for use by the Byzantines. Stop the video, restart it when you're done. Okay, moving on. Byzantine families preserve Greco-Roman culture. They value learning, Greek-Latin grammar, philosophy, literature, history, medicine, and math. And they really are the keepers of culture of the Romans and the Greeks for the modern world. Okay, Justinian had the good sense and the fortune, I guess, to be able to select the most able generals. And under these 2 generals, Narses and Belisarius, his reign can be said to have restored the Roman Empire to its ancient limits and reunited the East and West. He spreads out and back and reconquers much of the territory that had been lost with the fall of the West. Okay, his first war with Persia ends in a treaty favorable to him. But in 532 come the Nika riots, or the Nika riots, an outburst of political turmoil. Goes as far as to elect a rival emperor. Justinian almost quits town. Okay, he decides to run away, but at the last minute, Narses and Belisarius, his 2 main generals, bring in the troops, but it's really his wife, Theodora, who turns the tide. She says, Justinian, I'm not leaving. We're going to stay and we're going to fight. Justinian calls in the troops under Narses and Belisarius, and the riots are contained. They kill 35,000 of these rebels in one day. They invite them all to the hippodrome and lock the doors and wipe them out. It's a brutal attempt. So, and through Belisarius, the Vandal kingdom of Africa is re-annexed to the empire, and Belisarius and Narses restore the imperial authority in Rome, northern Italy, and Spain. All the areas that are in pink become parts of the Roman Empire, Romania, the Byzantine Empire. This is what the empire looks like at the death of Justinian, but it won't last. Okay. After Justinian's death, the empire suffers a series of setbacks. The plague comes in. Okay. Probably arrived from India on rat-infested ships around 543. Estimated over 10,000 people die each day. Lasts on and off until around 700 when it finally fades after destroying much of the population. Constantinople is under continuous attack. The Lombards attack from the west. The Persians attack from the east. You have all these troops, these groups that come out of Central Asia, the Avars, the Slavs, the Bulgars. The Russians attack. 11th century, the Arabs begin slowly to take over Byzantine territory, and as the size of the empire gradually shrinks, its walls hold out. And finally, it's just the rump of what's left and Constantinople. Finally, the city falls to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. Okay? Now, there's also a different church in the east than there is in the west. Okay? Religion as well as law serves Justinian's efforts to centralize the imperial office. Okay, the Patriarch of Constantinople crowns the emperors of the Eastern Empire of the Byzantines. Close ties between them. Okay, Christianity had been the official religion of the Eastern Empire since 380s. Everybody else is denounced as demented and insane. Orthodox Christianity, however, is not the only religion with significant followers, nor do they view it merely as a political tool. Okay. At one time or another, the Christian heresies of Arianism, the belief that Jesus was not of one substance with God, monophysitism, however you say that, Jesus has one nature, a composite of divine and human, not fully divine, not fully human, and iconoclasm, the attempt to abolish the use of icons or images in church services. This argument within the church goes on for many years, and eventually it wins out to the theories we have today of Jesus being one with God, being part of that Holy Trinity. But it wasn't always that. There was a huge argument over the level of divinity that Jesus had in the early church. Okay. Persecution and absorption into popular Christianity serves to cut short many pagan religious practices. I've talked about this, how things like the winter solstice holiday is turned into Christmas, and a lot of the other traditions of the pagans were adopted simply to make it easier for them, the pagans, to become Christian. Okay. Eventually, the geographic differences of East and West lead to religious differences. Byzantium or Eastern Christianity builds its heritage on the works of the early church fathers. There's disputes back and forth between the East and West, and in 1054, the Pope and the Patriarch of Constantinople excommunicate each other over a doctrinal dispute, and the church officially splits between Roman Catholic Church in the West, Eastern Orthodox Church in the East. Okay, a little bit of how it goes. You have the red is under the Pope, the blue is under the Patriarch. Okay, follows much of the lines of the two empires, the Western and the Eastern, and the church splits up, and it's still split today. Okay, so why? Well, the Pope says he's the guy in charge. The Eastern bishops say, no, you're not. There's many differences of opinions. Okay, some of it's over language. Eastern allows it to be spoken in the Orthodox language. The Eastern allows the clergy to marry. The head of the church in the Eastern Church is the Byzantine Emperor, where in the West it's the Pope. And the use of icons are forbidden, but later come back into the Eastern Church. They're allowed in the Western. There's also some land disputes between the two. Okay, so finally, Christian world is divided into two churches. You have the Western Church under the Pope, the Eastern Church based in Constantinople under the Patriarch. There's more state control in the East and less central authority of the church in the Eastern Church. Okay, so I want you to write about the schism between the Western and Eastern branches of Christianity in 1054, and how you think the fall of Constantinople to the Turks is a turning point in world history. This will be due in class when you return from break.